Okay, good evening everyone, and thank you very much for coming to a Dorset Humanist event. As there are quite a number of you this evening, I will project my voice as much as I can, but we do still have some seats at the front. If you have any difficulty hearing, don't be shy, just come forward. They've got some here as well. Yes, don't say to me afterwards, I couldn't hear and I was sitting at the back. Emergency exits are there, and the men's toilets are very conveniently situated in the corridor just outside. But if you are female, you have to walk about half a mile down the corridor this evening because the ladies' toilets are being refurbished apparently. And the hotel have said to us that the ladies may use the disabled facilities right at the end of the corridor, or there are some other ladies' toilets. There is only one, so where the other one is, you'll have to just find out for yourself. Okay. Please turn off your mobile phone. There's always one person who disobeys me, and it goes off, and it remains on the video forever and ever. And we name and shame you. So anyway, if you could try to put your mobile phone on silent, that would be great. If you do not want to appear in any photos or videos, do let us know and we'll see what we can do about it. We'll aim to wrap up as usual by 9:15 this evening, but do join us in the bar if you would like to. Well, I've been told I should stand here for the video, so I'm going to stand here for the video. Our speaker this evening is myself. And I'm Chairman of Dorset Humanists and editor of Humanistically Speaking magazine, which I hope you all read from cover to cover every month. Most of you know my life story, so I'm not going to repeat it now. But maybe you would just like to give me a very warm welcome. Oh, that's great. That gets us off to a good start. Okay, so this isn't the first time we've had a talk on Stoicism at Dorset Humanists. We covered it 8 years ago at Moordown Community Centre. Some of you may have attended that time. So obviously 8 years have gone by. It's time to have another look at it. In 2016, we did invite a university professor to talk about Stoicism, and of course we could have done so again, but I couldn't resist having a go at it myself. Daniel, who's here this evening, specifically requested this talk, and Steve also expressed an interest in it, and all of you have come here this evening, so something about it must have piqued your interest. I hasten to add that I'm not an academic authority on Stoicism, and I'm sure many of you will know things about it that I don't know. So do please share those thoughts and bits of knowledge as we go through. But my professional career was in making complicated stuff a bit more accessible and digestible. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve this evening. I'm going to run this as a kind of interactive workshop because I want you to react to what the Stoic philosophers said, not just listen passively. Stoicism is not an abstract theory, although sometimes it may be presented in a slightly abstract way. It's meant to be practical wisdom, something to learn, absorb, and put into practice. You may discover that you are already a Stoic, or well on the way to becoming one. Or you may find that your way of being in the world is nowhere near what the Stoics recommended. And that's fine as well. It's okay to disagree with Stoicism. Other philosophies are available. But if you do disagree with Stoicism or any elements of it, let's find out why. I won't be offended. My main source for this evening's talk has been this book, The Practicing Stoic, a Philosophical User's Manual by Ward Farnsworth, who is a professor at the University of Texas, hence the American spelling of practicing, which some of you will have noticed. There's loads of great stuff in this book, and I can't cover everything in one session. To do this justice, I would need to run a whole course over several sessions, and you would have to become diligent students of Stoicism. But hopefully we can get the gist of it tonight, or at least some aspects of it. Well, before we go any further, I'm going to take my jacket off because it's getting quite warm already. That's it for the striptease. Right. Okay, let's start with Montesquieu's view of Stoicism. Montesquieu was a French Enlightenment philosopher, and he said this: "Never were any principles more worthy of human nature and more proper to form the good man than those of the Stoics. And if I could for a moment cease to think of myself as a Christian, I should not be able to hinder myself from ranking the destruction of the sect of Zeno among the misfortunes that have befallen the human race." So I'm going to introduce you to Zeno in just a moment. I asked ChatGPT if Zeno's sect had in fact been destroyed, and it said it hadn't been. But of course, we don't really hear about the sect of Zeno anymore, so something happened to it. Okay, so that is very high praise. So let's see whether we agree with Montesquieu. Well, the popular notion of Stoicism, and some of you have already mentioned it here this evening, is that it means bearing suffering in an uncomplaining manner. So if we say someone is being very stoical, we're probably paying them a compliment. This is an aspect of Stoicism, but it's only one aspect. There's a lot more to it than that. Some people might ask, why do we have to go to the bother of studying ancient philosophers? Surely we've made enough progress in the modern world in terms of human psychology that we don't have to bother with ancient philosophy, which can be difficult and obscure. Why not just go to YouTube and find whatever you need? Well, one answer to this is that the ancient Stoics are not all that ancient in terms of human history. Humans have been around for a couple of million years, if we count all of the previous human species prior to Homo sapiens. And we've been struggling with the business of how to live a human life or how to be human for a very long time. The Stoics were very recent in terms of this long human history, just a couple of thousand years ago. Another answer is that human beings are still making the same mistakes that the Stoics addressed. Stoicism is a practical philosophy for reducing human misery and suffering, which is why you're all here this evening. And because we've forgotten about Stoicism, or to some degree we've largely forgotten about it, we're simply repeating all of the mistakes that they tried to address. So we have to relearn some of this ancient wisdom in order to live better and happier lives. Some of the lessons of Stoicism, so I'm sure some of you will know, have been integrated or absorbed into modern therapeutic techniques. For example, it's well known that CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is based on the idea that we tend to react not so much to events in the real world, but to our beliefs and interpretations about those events. So a CBT therapist tries to intervene at the level of cognition in order to help their clients think differently about a situation, looking at something from a different perspective, or challenging harmful beliefs about something. A typical example is catastrophizing. I'm sure we've got some catastrophists in tonight. If you catastrophize about some possible sequence of events, what you're doing is allowing your mind to get into a negative feedback loop instead of responding rationally to the real situation. And one of the main principles of Stoicism is to respond rationally to reality, which makes it very, very compatible with humanism. Well, let's have a quick look at the history of Stoicism just to put all this into context. The word Stoicism comes from the word stoa. In ancient Athens, the word stoa refers to a covered walkway or portico. If you've been to Athens, you may have visited the stoas. They were often lined with columns, and they provided a sheltered area for various activities, including public gatherings, markets, and philosophical discussions. They contributed to the social and civic life of the city. Stoicism was the philosophy which took place in the Stoa, as opposed to the philosophy which took place in a garden. If you know your Greek philosophy, you'll know that Epictetus famously had his philosophical school in a garden, or a philosophy which took place in the academy. I associate that with Aristotle. So this was philosophizing in the open air. So if we had Stoics around today, we might find them in a shopping mall or an arcade. Maybe we should start doing that, start having our meetings in shopping centres and arcades. Philosophy in the open air. I can imagine us cramming into Westbourne Arcade. That wouldn't be far for me to go. So maybe we should do that in future. Well, the founder of Stoicism was Zeno of Citium. Citium was an ancient city near Larnaca in Cyprus, now an archaeological site. Zeno taught in Athens from about 300 BCE, before the Common Era, roughly 2,300 years ago. There were a number of Stoic philosophers after Zeno, including Diogenes of Babylon, but our records of these ancient philosophers are fragmentary. So our best sources today are later Stoic philosophers, including Seneca the Younger, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. So let's have a quick introduction to these three people. So Seneca the Younger was born on the 4th of December. Does anyone share his birthday? No. Okay, he was born on the 4th of December in the year 4 BCE in Cordoba in Spain. He became a Roman statesman, philosopher, and playwright. He wrote many essays and letters on ethics and practical philosophy, including 124 epistles to someone called Lucilius, and essays on the shortness of life and the tranquility of the mind. So Seneca was about 69 when he died, which is not too short a life in terms of even today. Seneca was very wealthy, despite Stoic teachings which often emphasize the virtues of simplicity and self-control. He amassed significant wealth during his lifetime. His wealth came primarily from his career as a statesman and advisor to the Emperor Nero, as well as from various business ventures and investments. Unfortunately, because Seneca was implicated in a conspiracy to assassinate Nero, Nero commanded him to commit suicide, and in order to do this, Seneca cut his veins and sat in a hot bath. Which made me think of the poor the head of the secret services in America, who's had to resign. I don't think she's been told that she has to commit suicide, but okay, that's Seneca. We'll come back to him many times as we go through. Epictetus was born in Hierapolis, which is now an archaeological site in Turkey and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. His dates are 50 to 135. He was born into slavery and brought to Rome, where he served as an assistant of the Emperor Nero. Despite the harsh conditions of slavery, Epictetus was allowed some intellectual freedom, and he developed an interest in philosophy. He eventually gained his freedom and began teaching philosophy in Rome, but he relocated to Greece in the year 93. So he was about 85 when he died. He wrote nothing down, but his teachings were recorded by his student called Arrian, not Aaron, but Arrian, including a book called the Enchiridion, which is the Greek word for handbook or manual, as you all know, because you all studied Greek, didn't you? His philosophy emphasized the idea that we should focus on what is within our control and accept what is not within our control. His teachings emphasized rationality, self-discipline, and inner freedom. Marcus Aurelius was the 16th Roman emperor and a philosopher. He's best known for his book called Meditations, a series of personal writings that reflect his Stoic beliefs and a guide to living a virtuous life. His dates are 121 to 180, so he's in the 2nd century. He was only 58 years old when he died. Historical accounts suggest that he was known for his sense of justice and compassion. He sought to govern in a way that was fair and in the best interests of the people. Let's hope that modern day leaders can learn from him. So those are our three main sources. I could also mention Cicero and Plutarch, but I'm trying not to overburden you too much this evening with too much information. However, we should also note that Stoicism was influential in later writers and philosophers, including Michel de Montaigne, a very handsome Frenchman, 16th century French humanist and philosopher. He believed in the value of examining oneself and one's thoughts, famously saying, "I study myself more than any other subject." So if you are in the habit of writing a personal journal or a blog, examining yourself to the nth degree perhaps, then you are following the example of Montaigne. He also believed in the potential for human greatness, and he coined the slogan, "Make humanity great again." If you believe that, you'll believe anything. Stoicism also influenced the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, and he believed that recognizing the shared suffering of all beings leads to compassion and moral behavior. Well, I could go on with these connections, but the point I'm making is that Stoicism didn't just stop in ancient Rome. It continued to influence later philosophers, and it has come through in certain respects into our culture today. Well, let's look at the main themes of Stoicism. What's it all about, and is it of any use today? There are certain things that the Stoics I'll come on to that in a second. There are certain things that the Stoics believed, which we as humanists will have to set aside to some degree today. They believed in a rational and ordered universe governed by a divine principle they called the Logos. And the Logos represents the rational principle that pervades and organizes the universe. It's often equated with divine reason or the mind of God. They believed in a providential order where everything happens according to divine reason. They believed that the physical universe and human affairs are governed by something they called natural law, which they thought was derived from the Logos. The Stoic ideal meant living in accordance with nature and reason, and they believed in the interconnectedness of all things. So they had this idea of a rational, interconnected, and divinely ordered universe, and they emphasized living in harmony with the rational order of this universe. Okay, well, humanists believe in reason and rationality, and that the universe is governed by the laws of physics, but we don't have to follow the Stoics in believing that rationality somehow pervades the universe in some mysterious way. The practical philosophy of Stoicism still makes perfect sense if we wish to set aside their theology or their metaphysics. Okay, well, on the next slide I'm going to go through just 10 of the core ideas of Stoicism. This is just by way of a summary, and I will expand on the points as we go through, but this is just to give you a quick overview at this stage. So some core ideas of Stoicism. React to reality, not your opinions and thoughts about reality. As we go through life, we think that we are reacting to events, but more often than not, we're reacting to our thoughts and beliefs about events rather than the events themselves. We may not be able to change external events, but we may be able to change our thoughts and beliefs. We'll come back to some more examples of this later on. This is just a quick overview. Number 2, attachment to things beyond our control. The Stoics thought is a form of slavery, and the remedy is to focus on what we can control. We should stake our well-being on what we can control, and we should let go of attachment to what we cannot control. So, for example, a Stoic prefers prosperity to poverty, But wealth is considered to be an external. They have this idea of externals, and we should be indifferent to it. That word indifference will come up a lot, rather than enslaved to prosperity, for example. So if we get attached to things which are beyond our control, this will make us miserable. And there's an echo of Buddhism in this principle of non-attachment. So again, we'll come back to some more examples of this. So number 3, this leads us to a state of equanimity or tranquility, a mind less troubled by mental disturbance, upsets, tantrums, hissy fits, and so on. This is what Stoicism will help us to address. Number 4, conquering the fear of death is a major theme in Stoicism. We're going to say quite a bit about death tonight. I know we had a death cafe fairly recently, so we'll do a bit more death tonight, if that's okay. Number 5, get a more accurate view of reality by adopting different perspectives. So Stoics try to see things from different perspectives and new angles. This is one of their techniques to help us see things in proper perspective. So in modern terms, we might call this reframing, and a modern example, a very common example, seeing the glass as half full or half empty can just change the way you feel about something. Number 6, they thought that we should use adversity to build character. So they thought we shouldn't flee from adversity, we should treat it as a kind of resource for building character. Number 7, practice moderation, not gluttony. The Stoics recommended moderation in all things rather than excess. That's fairly common in ancient Greek philosophy, moderation. Number 8, it's rational to live a virtuous life, and happiness is a pleasant byproduct. So the flip side of this is that it is irrational to live a life which is degenerate in some way. The purpose of life, they thought, was virtue and devotion to the greater good. And happiness, or eudaimonia, that Greek word which is usually translated as flourishing, is an incidental byproduct of living virtuously. So when we talk about the virtues, we could have a whole list of them, but things like honesty, kindness, humility, and so on. Number 9, virtue is not just a private matter. It also involves engagement in public affairs, whether as a citizen, leader, or a family member. It would be a mistake to think that Stoicism is about withdrawing from the world. So this is a little bit of a contrast, I think, with Epictetus, who was also often considered to be a precursor of humanism. I think Epictetus was more inclined to sort of withdraw and do philosophy in a garden and sort of not bother about public affairs. But the Stoics did think that we should be engaged in public affairs in the broadest sense. Seneca and Marcus Aurelius were, of course, both leading figures in Rome. So that we have a duty to contribute to the community and the greater good in terms of Stoicism. So number 10, Stoicism is a practical philosophy, but that doesn't mean that it's always easy to put into practice. Perfection is not expected. It seems doubtful that any human being can become a perfect Stoic, living a life of perfect equanimity, but Stoicism may help us to achieve this state of mind. Okay, so what we're going to do now is look at some specific passages from Stoic writings. I may have too much stuff for tonight, but I'll just hammer through them and try to give you some time to see what's on the screen and get your reactions to at least some of them. So, our first theme then is reacting to thoughts rather than events. So this is Marcus Aurelius. If any external thing causes you distress, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your own judgment about it. And this you have the power to eliminate now. So the first bit of interaction is, and this is what I do in classrooms with children, I want you to talk to the person next to you if you have someone nearby. And what I'd like you to do is see if you can think of an example of this. So something that's caused you distress, but actually it's the way you thought about that rather than the thing itself. If you can't think of an example, don't worry, but let's see if we can come up with any examples. I've got some if you haven't. So just for a minute, just talk to the person nearby. What do you think, Pat? Can you think of any examples of this?
Straight away about tonight on the news there was the horse woman
Yes.
who's been excluded from the Olympics.
Oh, right.
A video's come out of her whipping her
Oh, yes.
quite a lot. In order to train her to do the she's a champion for this country.
Yes.
And she's was supposed to like me to win the whole thing. She's had very good. And I was thinking my reaction to it was horror. And that's because I'm judging what she's doing.
Yes. Yes.
But I'm questioning now what other reaction I can have.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So that might be a perfectly good reaction. But okay, interesting.
So it is my own judgment about what I feel.
Yes.
So I'm wondering now how I can. I'm not going to carry on for it.
No. Not necessarily wrong. It's not necessarily wrong to have that reaction. Yeah.
The power to eliminate that.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's just bring it back together, as they say in class, in 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm not going to be able to invite all of you to give me your thoughts on that, but maybe we'll just take one or two. Has anyone got a really good example of this? No one. Yes.
Well, I think the death of Princess Diana was probably a classic case.
Oh wow, yes. Okay, tell us a bit more about that.
Well, it caused everyone distressed. I lived in Romsey at the time, and everyone was going to Broadlands, leaving flowers. Everyone was upset, but no one knew. They
Yes.
They knew her thing, or whatever they thought they knew about.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
one really knew.
Yeah.
And then the conspiracy theories start building, and all that sort of stuff. It's still going on today.
Yeah.
A 9-year-old friend of ours, quite open, or 12-year-old now, quite openly asked us one night who killed Princess Diana.
Who killed Princess Diana? Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's
so
yeah.
That's the one that I picked.
Okay, as an interesting example, I cried buckets when I heard about Princess Diana. So yeah.
I got upset, but it is a classic example.
Yeah, I know, but really interesting.
Actually, does it mean anything?
Very interesting. Okay, thank you. Let's have another example. Anything else that someone's come up with?
We could talk about Brexit, really.
Oh no, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to mention Brexit. But very quickly, Brexit. Yes, go on.
So essentially, being all anti-Brexit, in our group of 3, so that's how the numbers ran.
You're just the only 3 anti-Brexit people in the room tonight. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And our view was that people who were pro-Brexit were probably more emotive in their voting choices than we were in having a fuller understanding of Brexit.
Oh, I see. Okay. Getting very political here, but okay, all right.
An emotion about a sense of freedom, I think.
Yes.
I think
Okay.
too, it's being able to overcome any loss and realise that, one door closes, another opens, that you,
Yes.
you turn things around
Yes.
and can give thanks for whatever it is that's brought you to that pitch, and then be able to move on from it
Yeah.
and let it go.
Yeah, that's a very good way of thinking about things. Yes, Daniel.
No, and I got a parking ticket recently, and I admit I was a little bit annoyed when I saw the parking ticket because we were parked in a place where you could only park for 10 minutes, but we had been there for 12 minutes, and I felt annoyed because I thought that the world should be structured in such a way that I don't get punished for parking for 2 minutes too long, or that the parking attendant should have taken mercy on us. But that's just not the way that the world is, and it would be irrational to get upset at my expectation that it should be a different way, and that I've been let down by
Okay. Okay, that's a nice example. Steve?
Yeah, this kind of, the lady there was saying something that I kind of, like, when things have happened, I'm not going to go into specific things, but loads of things go wrong in your life, and you can spend months and months thinking about what happened and why it happened and etc. And then there's, I definitely have to get to a point where I think, well, now I'm ruminating or overthinking this, and time I need to stop and accept
Yes.
it happened and I've got to move on. So
Yeah, yeah.
letting go.
Yeah. So there was like an attachment to that, and the Stoic idea would be,
I guess so.
yeah.
You want to sort of think that could you have done something differently, or could have things done differently. You can also get attached to the idea of if only something else had happened.
Sure. Okay. Well, look. Let's. I've got one example that you may find interesting. So my example is road rage.
Oh my God!
You did road rage, yeah.
Yeah, we did road rage.
Road rage. Okay. So here we go. So why does one person fly into a rage when something happens on the road, whereas another person is completely calm? My mother. Yes, Corinne.
I believe it's fear in the person that gets angry. I really do.
Fear. Okay.
It's fear.
Okay.
That they come out as anger, but in fact what it is something's changed and actually they're fearful.
Okay. That's one theory. Okay. My mum used to say to me when she was in the car with me driving, she used to say, "Oh, you're such a calm driver. When I'm with your brother and your sister, they get so het up about the traffic, So anyway, so this is an example of road rage. Someone enters a box junction, one of those yellow crisscross grid patterns, when they shouldn't, and they block the traffic. So do you, A or B? A, fly into a rage because this person has broken the rules and you should reprimand them in some way and be really cross with them. Pardon? Toot them. Yeah. Or do you remain calm because this person has just made they've made a misjudgment, a mistake. Not their fault. Don't get worked up about it. So hands up those of you who would be in the A camp, get really mad.
Yeah, we'll go to the middle. Yeah, it depends which direction I'm driving.
How many of you would say that you would be very calm about this and not be too worried about it? Oh, okay, we've got lots of Stoics in tonight. Okay. Well, I think B is the right answer. That's the Stoic indifference. Okay, but maybe they should be punished in some way. I don't know. Right, next example is reacting to thoughts rather than events. This is about death. Death is nothing terrible, rather the opinion that death is terrible. That is the terrible thing. And there's another quote, that's Epictetus. This is Seneca. Reports that make the underworld terrible to us are mere tales. No darkness threatens the dead, no prison, no blazing streams of fire, no seats of judgment. All those things are the sport of the poets who have stirred us up with terrors that are empty. Well, I've got a little example of this, and I have shared this with you before, because it's something that played on my mind. So John and I had a friend called Bill who died in 2005, and he had a brain tumour, and he was lying in Poole Hospital, and he was obviously dying. He had a few days to live. And he said to me when he was on his deathbed, "David, I'm facing the abyss. I'm facing the abyss." Now, from a rational Stoic point of view, he wasn't actually facing any abyss. But the belief that he was facing an abyss was pretty terrible, I would imagine. You know, it's a horrible kind of image. So, have you got any thoughts about what should I have said to Bill? What should I, as a humanist, have said to him at the time? Yes, Barry.
Yes, I stuck my hand up quickly because, as you know, this is a subject that comes up in school lessons, in school speaking.
Yeah.
One of the most difficult subjects to tackle with anybody, really, but kids, is this question of death and the difference between humanism and religion, which offers a narrative of a journey, and strangely, humanism doesn't. For myself, I have to say that one of the most comforting lessons that I have extracted from humanism is that life comes to an end after which there is nothing. Because if there is nothing, there is nothing to fear.
Yes, yes.
And this is the message. And the idea that you're facing an abyss is wrong. What you're facing is nothingness. It's the same state as you were in before you were conceived.
Precisely. Yeah, yeah.
And that I find very... it's a sort of Stoic idea, I suppose. Anybody who rejects the afterlife would come to that conclusion.
Yes,
But it's
yeah.
one of the most powerful messages I've extracted from
Yeah,
humanism.
yeah. Okay, so in that situation then, Sally, what are your thoughts here?
I was just wondering, were all these ancient Stoics, like Seneca sounds here, believers that there was no afterlife of any sort, or was there a variety of views among them about what it could be?
I'm not entirely sure, but it sounds to me as though they didn't really believe in the afterlife.
Yeah.
They had this idea of the gods, you know, somewhere floating somewhere on the top of Mount Olympus or wherever it was, but I don't think not sure they believed in life after death.
The gods at that time were not morally judgmental. In fact, they were a nasty bunch amongst themselves.
Yeah.
But they weren't judging humans.
No.
Today.
Yeah. Simon?
Yeah, I mean, just carrying on that discussion, I think actually from Catherine Nix's talk just a few months ago, it was clear that during that time there was so much superstition around, not just the formal religions, but everything was fanciful. So the Stoics were coping with such a vast plethora of superstitions.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to discern which was a superstition and what was a religion, and probably there wasn't really any sensible, you can't really discriminate. As regards dealing with this, my technique professionally has always been to sort of, get people to tell me about it. Tell me what's this abyss talking about, and that gets it off their chest up to a point.
Okay. Three more, and then we'll carry on. So yes, Elaine, Pat, and John. So Elaine, and Aaron. All right, 4, but briefly because we do need to move on. Elaine.
When you say dealing with the abyss, and this is the person who's dying, is thinking of something, but I think if I were in that situation, I'd be thinking about all the people close to me who were also close to this person, and how the death of this person would affect them. And that would be the abyss. That in a way you didn't want that person to die because of all the grief it was going to.
Okay, yes, so thinking of other people in that situation. Pat?
Yes, I'm wondering if he was using "I'm facing the abyss" as a way of describing what he's feeling.
Yes.
And in that case, just staying with what he's feeling, because any one of us is entitled to feel what we want. To say we shouldn't fear death, blanket.
Yes. Yes.
If someone is feeling fear, then that's what they're feeling.
Yes.
They have the right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just suggesting there might be ways of, that was a kind of, I'm suggesting that was a belief about something that was going to happen, but it's kind of doesn't have any rational foundation. But John.
Just an obvious point, really, but we shouldn't dismiss bad things and say that it's all in your mind. So if, for example, I wake up tomorrow and I have get a disease which causes me to be in constant pain, then I can make it worse by my attitude.
Yes.
I can make it worse or better by my frame of mind. But we should accept that that's not a pleasant thing. So to say that it's all about the person's reaction to the reality rather than to the reality. Some realities are a lot better than others.
Yes, I've got some quotes which you will agree with. So yeah, no, you're right, of course. Aaron.
Yeah, every night we go to sleep, we don't really stay awake for 3 hours worrying about, will I wake up tomorrow?
Yeah.
And as we get to the last 30 years of our life, whenever that is, we can't go around thinking this could be the last one, will I wake up tomorrow? So is it just going to sleep and then not waking up the next day? Or is death about the worrying of pain of death? In which case, if you like a plane crash or something. But if you go to sleep, die in your sleep, should you worry about it?
Yeah, okay. Well look, there's... So I think this is something, as humanists, we might want to think about, what is our attitude going to be at that point? Because, well, okay, some of us might be on a deathbed at some point. Some of us might just drop dead and, don't have time to think about it. So there are possibly some other ways of thinking about this. As Aaron has just said, I'm going to sleep. You might think, oh, I'm just going to sleep. I've had enough, I'm going to sleep. Or you might think, I've had a good life. It's been a blast. I've had an amazing life. You could introduce some humour into it. Come in number 5, time is up. No regrets would be a Stoic way of thinking about it. So a Stoic would say we can't control it, the process of death, and we shouldn't try to cling on to life. They might say be indifferent to it, this idea of non-attachment and letting go. We're born, we live, we die, and this is the same fate for all living things. Cicero has an interesting way of talking about this. He says that we should have contempt for death, as if it is just kind of nothing. Right, okay, now we're staying on the same theme of reacting to thoughts rather than events, and this next slide is particularly for Lynn. Lynn might react to this one, so let's see what happens.
George Clooney on it.
Not George Clooney, but it's the dishy Frenchman from the 16th century, Montaigne, okay. So he said, I know a gentleman who, having entertained a large group at his house, a few days later boasted as a joke that he had fed them a pie made out of a cat. And one of the young ladies was so stricken with horror that she developed a violent stomach disorder. So maybe we can have just a very quick discussion about that. Do any of you have any beliefs or thoughts about food that put you off eating things rather than the actual taste of something? Is there something in your mind you think, oh, I can't possibly eat that because it's disgusting or whatever? Any thoughts on that? Oh, right, yeah. Well, Aaron's hand's gone up, but yeah, Rehan, yeah.
The one that always comes to mind is pineapples on pizza.
Pineapples on pizza. Do you think this is just wrong? Is this just wrong or what?
Yeah, there is something off about that. It doesn't feel right.
Okay. So have you ever tried it?
No, I haven't.
Oh.
I think I'm the only one who feels that way.
Maybe, would you try? Maybe we should give you the pineapple pizza challenge. Yeah. See what happens. Okay. Yes.
Shellfish, bivalves particularly.
Shellfish and bivalves and slugs.
Well, slugs in shells they are really.
Oh, I see.
And snails.
Now, do you see the way?
But I don't look at them.
But you see, the way you're describing that is putting you off, isn't it? You're calling them slugs in shells,
They're grey and orange.
Yeah, right, okay.
On the outsides, yes.
Yeah, okay. Right. Yes, Lynn.
Well, it's one of the reasons I'm a vegetarian, because I look at any animal and I look at the meat and I can see whether it's a sheep or a beef or something, it's got a personality, and I'm not vegan, so I'll have milk, but I'll put the cows there. So there's that sort of distress about the situation that the animal has been in before it's killed. Although I do hear there's a lot of techniques that are very painless, but I don't want to contribute to that, that's all.
Okay, yeah, very good. Aaron?
Yeah, when I was a kid, there was something called brains faggots. And I
Ooh.
imagined they were actually made out of brains. And for some reason, that just seemed repulsive.
Maybe they were made out of brains.
Maybe.
Where you come from, they probably were. So. Yeah, it does sound disgusting, doesn't it? Barry?
On the other end of the spectrum, I'm omnivorous, so as long as it's not moving too fast, I'll eat it.
Oh, right, okay. Yes?
I was going to say, I think a lot of it's cultural, isn't it? Because some parts of the world eat insects, which we would probably not want to eat.
Yes.
It's obviously a really sensible form of protein going forwards. And then not even in this country, years ago, hundreds of years ago, people ate quite differently. There was a lot more eating of offal and things like that.
Yes.
Now it's not something that people want to do, but it used to be very traditional to liver and
Yeah.
things like that.
Tripe. Right. Okay. Two more, and then we'll move on. Yes, Daniel, and then
So I used to enjoy.
sorry, Barney.
I used to enjoy eating Finder's lasagnas, and then there was a small scandal when it turned out that a lot of the meat in them was not beef; it was actually horse meat, and so they were taken off the shelf. It was a shame because I really liked them, and it didn't bother me for some reason at all that it had horse meat in it. If they said it was a horse lasagna, I probably would still have bought it. But it upsets a lot of people. I did grow up in the town here. I didn't grow up in the countryside, so I guess I never saw horses as pets in the way that somebody who's grown up around horses.
Yes. Yeah.
I wouldn't eat a dog for the same reason.
No.
But that's the cultural thing, isn't it?
It is cultural, isn't it?
In France and Belgium, they'd probably be quite happy to eat
Yeah.
horse lasagna.
Yeah.
I would eat pig, and pigs are probably not that much less smart than dogs.
Okay, one more, Barney.
Yeah, I think Montaigne's quite right, because if you've eaten something and it's given you food poisoning or something and you've been dreadfully ill, then the next time you see that same food, you can actually get a physical, actual feeling of illness just looking at the food.
That is true.
And I think it's worth pointing out that it's not just food, it's other areas of life like people with chronic pain conditions, which I have some knowledge of. Suppose you've been on a jet ski and fallen off and twisted your shoulder or your knee or whatever, and it's been very painful. You might then, a month later, just look at a jet ski and it might actually get a measurable feeling of pain just with the association.
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe as Stoics we can think, hang on, this is irrational just because it happened before.
But this isn't that situation. This is sort of psychosomatic illness based on the knowledge.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Unless you haven't eaten the cat.
You hadn't actually eaten the cat, no. Right, where am I? I have got a little anecdote. My brother-in-law was called Mike. He claimed that he once served pedigree chum on toast to some of his friends, and they said it was delicious. But had they known afterwards, would they have vomited afterwards? I don't know. The story may be apocryphal, but he used to tell that with a certain degree of relish. Okay. Yes, but maybe try it. Okay, this is Samuel Johnson. What we believe ourselves to want torments us not in proportion to its real value, but according to the estimation by which we have rated it in our own minds. So I don't know if you can think of any examples of that. So what we believe ourselves to want torments us not in proportion to its real value, but according to the estimation by which we have rated it in our own minds. Let's just see if we've got a couple of examples of that. What was that about handbag?
A Chanel handbag.
Oh, a Chanel handbag. Is this something that you would love to?
I might.
Okay, right. Okay. Does it torment you? Does it torment?
Well, it doesn't actually torment me. I know people who it would torment.
Ah, okay. Very interesting. Yeah. A few more hands go up quickly then. So.
Climbing Mount Everest.
Climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah.
So, yes. So you're saying that the belief that there would be some fantastic experience might be. Is that what you mean?
Mountaineers who are committed to getting up it are willing to walk literally on the bodies of other dead mountaineers to get to it. And then they're asked, I think it was Ed Hillary who was asked, why do you do it? And he said, because it's there.
Yes, although mountaineers do say that it is a wonderful experience, don't they? So.
That's not oxygen.
Pardon?
That's lack of oxygen.
Lack of oxygen. Oh, right, okay. Okay. Annie?
I look at it as the proportion of anything. I'm not sort of, if you are surrounded by people living in massive houses with wealth and you're not as wealthy, you're aspiring and perhaps feel tormented, I'm not keeping up with my house. But then they're probably living in a house that is luxury to somebody further down the scale. So really, you know, or believing if somebody says, you've just won £1,000, you're delighted. But then if they tell you, actually, we thought you won 5,000, but sorry, we only give you the 1,000.
Yes.
You're not happy.
Yes.
Now that £1,000 makes you unhappy. So it's really proportionally how you're looking at it. Should you be having more?
You're definitely thinking like a Stoic. Well done, Annie. Yes, you've definitely got you've got a star. Yes. Rehan.
It's not related to this, but I'm just wondering if it's true about Samuel Johnson. I've heard that he's apparently an ancestor of Boris Johnson. I think that's true.
I don't know. Oh, well, maybe. I don't know.
Because he is coming from a rich family. So
Oh, well, we'll have to try. Yeah, we'll have to try and find out.
He didn't have any children.
Oh, didn't he?
Not a direct ancestor. Okay. Phil?
My first reaction on reading what he said there is, what do we mean by real value? Where does real value come from, unless it's our estimation of the value to us? Maybe it's the value, maybe it's what we think the value is to other people. I mean, what a few people have said implies real value is monetary value. But that's
yes.
I'm not really sure what you mean.
Okay. Fair enough.
I think by real value, he means the satisfaction he would get if he got it, and he'd discover that that's a lot less than he had rated it in his mind when somebody else had it.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it means by real value. It means if you actually got what he thinks he wants, he discovers it's not worth as much as he thought.
I mean, the Chanel handbag example, the Stoics would say it's just a handbag, you know. Doesn't matter what it is, you know, it's just a handbag. Who hasn't had? Yes, Amel.
I'm thinking about people who live in council places who don't have enough money and who buy brand new BMW cars that they, you know, they will die to have this brand new cars. This idea that this make them more valuable or more valued, or while some extremely rich people don't care and they use a bike. Or
I mean, they might very well get pleasure from this car, but the Stoics would say it's just a car, you know.
In
But
their mind, it's
okay. Oh, so many hands going up. I'm going to have to stop you in a minute, but let's see who hasn't had a go. Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who think they'll be happy when they get, I say, X, Y, Z.
Yes.
It's an old handbag, but once they got it, they want something else.
Then they want,
and so you've got to be happy on the journey rather than the destination where you go to X place or whatever.
Yeah.
You've got to be happy, with the process of getting to wherever it is.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you won't get that real satisfaction.
Okay. Two more, Roger, quickly, and then Daniel. Then I must steam through my slides.
Alcohol. People often torment about alcohol. For example, I've got quite a tried throat, so Barry is tormenting me now with this pint, this bottle of beer in his hand.
Yes, and it's empty.
There's a glass of water.
Yes. All right. Okay. Daniel.
Well, there are a lot of people who thought that we'd be happy after we left the European Union.
Not Brexit again. Right. Okay. Okay. Was that it? Your point? Okay. Righty-ho. Let's keep going. Now, the example I had, see what you think of this. Maybe a single person might be tormented by the belief that married people are in a state of bliss. If only they knew. So a Stoic would say, be indifferent to what they call externals, single or married, whatever, make the most of it. If you believe that happiness depends on getting a mate, that belief is the thing that might make you miserable. Okay, this is Plutarch. We've kind of anticipated Plutarch, but he said this. A somewhat similar case is the idea that deceives the mass of mankind that if they could live in big houses and get together enough slaves and money, they would have a happy life. But a happy and cheerful life does not come from without. On the contrary, a man adds the pleasure and gratification to the things that surround him, his temperament being, as it were, the source of his feelings. So the idea here is that our happiness doesn't depend on these big houses. Big houses are fine, but our happiness actually can come from very simple things. We do know from the science of happiness that money does increase the happiness of people without money, people who are poor. But adding more and more money does not add much happiness after a certain point. There is a law of diminishing returns. In fact, the more money you have, it can go into reverse. A great deal of money can produce a great deal of anxiety because you become fearful of losing it. And the Stoic principle is to be indifferent to it. If you've got it, fine. If you haven't got it, well, don't be sort of enslaved to the idea of getting more and more. Now, I'd like to think that we practice this in Dorset Humanists. Some of our members live in expensive houses and some of our members live on housing benefit. And as humanists, we try to be indifferent to the wealth or poverty of our members. We value them equally. What matters is their mind, not their money. Many friendship groups are based on similar levels of wealth and status, maybe status displays and competition. This is one of the reasons I love Dorset Humanists. We are indifferent to the status and wealth of our members. We neither despise it nor do we worship it. We enjoy it if it's there, but if it's not there, it doesn't matter. Let's move on to another theme, which is remaining detached from what the Stoics called externals. And this is Epictetus. He said, there is only one road to happiness. Let this rule be at hand, morning, noon and night. Stay detached from things that are not up to you. Well, maybe it's overstating it a bit to say that there is only one road to happiness. But I wonder what you make of this claim. So an example of this might be something that's been in the news a lot in recent months, conflicts in other parts of the world, specifically Gaza. So some people might experience mental and emotional anguish about these conflicts, causing them even to have sleepless nights. I was talking to Pat earlier about this case of the woman who was harming a horse, which has been in the news, and you had a reaction to that. But another person might think that the war in Gaza is awful, but their mental and emotional state remains relatively undisturbed. So I'm wondering what you think about this. Is the first person more virtuous than the second? Maybe the distressed person will be motivated to do something about it, like going on a march or something. But maybe the Stoics would say, there's not really anything you can do about it, so be detached from it. Don't have sort of a mental disturbance about conflicts that are going on in other parts of the world. Maybe we'll have one or two reactions to that. What do you think? Yes, Susan.
I think again it's a question of control. If it's this lovely Indian saying, if there's something you can do about it, why worry? If there's nothing you can do about it, why worry? And
yes.
It's the thing, thinking that somehow or another I can change the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's realising where you may be able to
make a difference. But on the whole, that I am not in control.
Yes, okay. And Pat?
Yeah, I had an immediate reaction when you started saying that, because isn't there a quotation, for evil to survive, it only takes good men to do nothing about it. And so
yes.
I'm really struggling with, don't bother about it, let it go.
So, yes. So I suppose the Stoics would say if you can do something about it, well, fine. But maybe they're saying you need to recognise when you can't do. But maybe we can all do something about it. I don't know,
I
Simon.
think there's a sort of subtle nuance to add to what Pat's just said, that actually you can stay detached so that you are not either upset or excited by it, but you can still apply your reasoning brain to say, this is bad, and therefore I will do something about it.
Yes, okay. Yep.
So, yeah, it's reason as opposed to raw emotion.
Okay, yes, yeah. Sorry, there's a young lady there, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, but there's these people online that create songs, and if you use the songs, they generate revenue that go towards helping people in Gaza. So personally, I like to use the songs whenever I can, but now it's turning into more of a thing where people will post a video, if you don't use this song, you're a horrible human being. And that makes me feel even worse. So I'm like, okay, I'll use the song, but then because I'm using the songs, more and more of these videos are coming up, and I already felt bad enough with what's happening, and now I feel like a horrible person
yes.
when I am using the sounds to promote revenue. And I think people have turned it into something else, and people are now boycotting it, and they're like, you're calling me a horrible person, now I'm not going to help you. And people are like, we're forgetting what the actual point of this is about.
Yes.
Blaming people who have nothing to do with it.
Okay, yeah, very good example, thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I think you've definitely got to try and limit what you kind of allow yourself to be emotionally involved by, because I mean, in the past you wouldn't have heard that so much, and now we can hear that so much in any one day, just an hour on the internet.
Yes.
You can be aware of dozens of conflicts and all sorts of, inequality and poverty around the world, and you could be in a state of despair in no time.
Yes.
You'd be soaking all that.
Yeah, John?
So during the war, during the Second World War, I know most people weren't aware of the concentration camps in the Second World War, but had you been aware of the concentration camps in the Second World War, would you think you should ignore that because it's the other side of the world?
Yeah, that's a very good example. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yes, Elaine.
I'm a little concerned about this word happiness, because in some situations it's as empty a thing to be happy. Yes, when all sorts of other things are going wrong. So happiness, I mean, for myself, I can think the most awful thing that could happen to me would be either being tortured or threatened with torture. And thinking of people in other parts of the world who are having to face this, it's very difficult to understand how they do it.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to have to guillotine this fairly soon, but Barry, or gentleman at the back there, yes. Yeah.
You might actually address this, because one of the criticisms of Stoicism is that Stoics are emotionally detached. It might be something you'll come
Okay. Yes, yeah. I will address that, yeah. Last one, David, I think, and then we'll...
Well, I personally spent many hours on the phone talking to people as a member of the Samaritan, and I thought that was a valuable thing that I did, and it wasn't really, didn't help me so much, but I felt it was helping somebody else.
And when you were in that kind of voluntary situation, did you remain fairly detached? I mean, you were concerned, obviously, you were offering a service, but you weren't taking on the distress of all of the people calling in?
Oh no, you had to detach yourself from that.
Yeah.
You usually had a companion to talk to.
Sure.
In the rooms.
Yeah.
Or a supervisor.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, I think what we're probably saying is that, you know, it's all very well saying that, but it's easier said than done, and there are all sorts of complicating factors here. Okay, let's move on. Where am I? Now, this is Montaigne. He said, not being able to govern events, I govern myself. And if they will not adapt to me, I adapt to them. Now that's quite interesting, but there is a contradiction, and I thought of this contradiction from George Bernard Shaw, which you may be familiar with. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. So, you know, we've got contradictory things going on here. And maybe both of them are right in certain circumstances. Montaigne probably has a quieter life than Shaw. Okay, this is Schopenhauer. This is quite interesting, again on happiness. So Schopenhauer said, the ordinary man places his life's happiness in the things external to him, in property, rank, wife and children, friends, society and the like, so that when he loses them or finds them disappointing, the foundation of his happiness is destroyed. In other words, his centre of gravity is not within himself, it is constantly changing its place with every wish and whim. Well, I think this is quite hard, but one of the philosophical techniques recommended by the Stoics is to practice losing such things in your imagination, and this can be quite difficult. So I'll just take you through some examples. Because of time, I'm not going to get everyone to say their bit, but just think about the things I'm saying. So first example, so let's start off with something very nice and simple. A favourite possession gets broken, maybe a cup or a glass or something, you know, something that you've really liked, and let's say that your partner accidentally breaks this thing, smashes it to smithereens. Are you upset about it? Who would be upset about losing something like a favourite glass or a... Yeah, okay, well one person has admitted that, two, yes, okay, might be upset. I'll give you one example. When I was in my 20s, I spent a lot of money on a beautiful shirt from John Anthony. It was my favourite shirt, and I ripped it on a door handle. In fact, this door handle ripped... I was staying in lodgings somewhere in Holmhurst Road. This door handle ripped two of my favourite shirts. I was very, very upset. I'm still upset about losing that shirt because it was unique. But, you know, the Stoics would say, it's only a shirt, you know. Okay, how about this one? Your bike is stolen. Would you be upset? Hands up if you would be upset if your bike... Right, lots more hands going up, okay? Well, the Stoic question to you is, why are you so attached to your bike? Wouldn't it be better if you had a bike that was not worth stealing in the first place? So I have a bicycle. I locked it up outside the gym the other day. And when I got back to the bicycle after doing my workout at the gym, I realised that I'd actually tied the lock just around the bike, and I hadn't gone round the actual thing, you know, one of those bike things. Nobody stole it because my bike is 20 years old and it has no kind of... Nobody covets my bike, so I can virtually leave it. And mind you, I do still lock it up. I'd be annoyed if someone did steal it one day. Right, what about this one? Your house burns down. Would your happiness be utterly destroyed if your house burnt down? Hands up, those of you who'd be pretty distressed at this. Okay, right. You might. It was interesting to think about what things would you miss most, what things are you most attached to. Maybe you need to put them somewhere else or put them somewhere safe. How about this one? Your life savings are wiped out. Would you be upset if your... Hands up if you would be upset if your life savings were wiped out in a stock market. Right, okay. I can see I'm causing all of you a lot of mental disturbance by these horrible things that I'm making you think about. but this is good practice for you as Stoics, just to think about what your reaction would be. A Stoic would say, what if you had no savings in the first place? Why were you so attached to all of that money? Now this next one is, probably the worst of all, but I'm going to mention it because it was actually experienced by Seneca. Okay, so this is the death of a child, one of the worst things in human experience, and Seneca himself lost a son. Now, so how would a Stoic approach this? Let's see what Seneca says about this. Okay. So when you have lost one of those dearest to you, to suffer endless grief is foolish indulgence. To suffer none, inhuman hardness. The best middle course is to feel a sense of loss and to subdue it. Believe me, a great part of those we have loved remains with us, even if some accident has taken them away. Do you think he's got that right, or? Yeah. So there is I think what he's saying is that it's possible to sort of hold on to that grief, perhaps. I mean, I've never experienced that myself. My mother lost, a boy who would have been my brother, but that was in the 1950s. So, I know how terrible this can be. But anyway, it's just interesting that Seneca himself experienced this, and that is his advice. Okay. Yes, Elaine.
One thing that I understand people who lose a very dear one, a dependent, shall we say, a child or someone who's needed them, but they need an ending to it, and people. There was something on the radio this morning, I think it was on during the night, these horrible stories that come on the world service, and where this man lost a child, died. No, that the father was, this perhaps was on the television, but this story sort of focused in my head. The father of a young girl disappeared, and he was assumed drowned, but his body was never found for a long time. And this is much more difficult, apparently, to cope with. Than a body that you go through the ritual.
Yes, of course, yeah. Okay, let's move on to something that the Stoics often describe attachment to, again, what they call externals, as a form of slavery. So Stoicism is perhaps a way to liberation from slavery. However, they have been criticised as being hypocrites. Seneca himself was very wealthy, and Marcus Aurelius was also rich and powerful. But let's see what they said about this. So this is Epictetus, who was a slave himself and became free. Whoever then wishes to be free, let him neither wish for anything nor flee from anything that depends on others. Otherwise, he must be a slave. And Seneca, he said, show me who is not a slave. One is a slave to lust, another to avarice, another to ambition, and all are slaves to fear. So I'm sure we can all think of things which enslave us in the modern world, or we might actually talk about addictions in sort of modern terminology, things that we're addicted to, which we're not free from. So, but this next one from Epicurus actually is quite interesting. Epicurus said, if you would attain real freedom, you must be the slave of philosophy. Well, they would say that, wouldn't they? Now, the reason I haven't put an image of Epicurus up on the screen is because when I looked up Epicurus on Google, his image was absolutely identical to Epictetus. So, who knows what they look like. Okay, one more on this particular theme. This is Montaigne again. One who is content to sit by the fireplace and who knows how to manage a household without falling into quarrels and lawsuits is as free as a Duke of Venice. I think Montaigne had a very nice castle, didn't he, somewhere in France. So he obviously felt quite free. Now, this is about dealing with illness and pain. Now, earlier on, earlier on, we had the comment that, the pain is real, and the Stoics are not denying that. But Epictetus says this: I have a headache. Do not add, alas, I have an earache. I'm not saying you cannot groan, but don't groan inside. So I think what they're trying to get at here is that, my question really to you is, can you be happy even when you're ill? Hands up those of you who think you can be happy even if you're ill. It might depend on the illness, but can you be happy even if you're ill? Lots of hands have gone up. Hands up those of you who think you can't be happy if you're ill. Okay, well, half a hand went up there. I was a little bit under the weather recently with a cough and so on. But I was aware of the fact that even though it was causing me sleepless nights and it was quite unpleasant, it didn't really adversely affect my general state of happiness. So it just made me think that you can be happy. I mean, one of the things that you can be happy about when you're ill is if you've got a loved one who's actually looking after you. You're getting all of that love and attention, and they might be enjoying looking after you as well. Simon?
I'm so sorry to be really cynical on this, but I think some people are actually happy because they're ill.
Oh, right, okay.
Having people looking after you, yes, clearly that is nice.
Yes.
But also having something to focus your mind upon and to talk about with your friends.
Yes.
I mean, as I said, it's a cynical observation, but I think it's true.
Okay, interesting. Yes, comment at the back, yep.
I don't think that you say you were quite ill, seriously ill, that you would be constantly happy, but there would certainly could be moments of happiness within that. I think it's more about, nothing's a constant, so I think within those situations, if you had something, you might look at someone else and think, oh my God, that's terrible.
Yes.
But there will be the odd moment where they're a funny joke.
It absolutely depends, doesn't it? It depends on the severity, it depends on all sorts of things. I mean, I always think of my dad, who had Parkinson's for 40 years. Right at the end of his life, he died when he was 80, but just a few weeks before he died, the joy on his face when we took him out to see nature, it was sort of in early summer, and he just got so much joy just from that situation, even though he was physically wrecked, really. So, okay, it's just a thought there. Yeah, one more, Roger.
A lot of people who have experiences, I think a lot of people who are seriously ill are sometimes more stoic, more relaxed about it, and actually being the support of the people around them who are maybe more anxious and stressed about it when they're much more sort of
yes,
ready to do matter fact.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Okay. Let's move on to another theme. A favourite Stoic technique is for getting into the right relationship with things is seeing things as they really are. Here's Marcus Aurelius, rather a long passage, but I'll read it out to you. The thought might occur to us when eating fancy food, back on food here, that this is the corpse of a fish or a bird or a pig. I think Lynn was sort of saying this. Or this fancy wine is the dribble of a bunch of grapes. Or about copulation, this is the rubbing of a little piece of entrail, and along with some convulsion, an excretion of mucus. I have no idea what that's all about. Impressions like these penetrate to the heart of things and let us see what they really are. We should do the same in all areas of life. Whenever things appear too highly valued, we should lay them bare in our minds and strip off the prestige they have traditionally been assigned. Again, this reminds me of the Chanel handbag, I think. It's only a handbag. And one of the things that came to my mind was the robes of King Charles, you know, when he's got all of his robes and crowns on and all the rest of it. I think we've got, no, it's not that. Yeah, not on the slide. So Montaigne said, let him present himself in his undershirt. So I don't know, you might not want to think about King Charles in his undershirt, but it's just that idea that, you know, if he didn't have all of those robes and all that, he would be kind of an ordinary person. If he didn't.
That is part of the coronation.
I was just going to say.
John, okay, you go ahead, yes.
There was a bit of the coronation service where he's stripped.
Yes, yes.
Before they put the other stuff on.
Yes.
So it's the reminder of the ordinariness of the person who then put all the gold.
Yes, you're right, very good, very good. Thank you.
Also, they're doing the anointing.
If he actually takes his clothes off, that's why there was a scene where he was covered over this canopy.
Yes.
And the oil was put on it because he was naked.
Yeah, I don't think he was entirely naked, but yeah.
I think he had his underpants.
He was more or less down to his undershirt, yes. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think most people want to see that. Don't find wrong, but...
Yeah. Let's move on to perspective. So the Stoics are very good at changing the perspective of things to get us to see things in a different way. So a thought here to think about our modern obsession with the length of our lives and constant advice in newspapers and so on, how to live to 100. We even had one of our speakers published a book, Arian Shireen, How to Live to 100. Now, I do have to remind you at this point that if you do become a paid-up member of Dorset Humanists, your probability of living to 100 does in fact go up considerably. Some of our members have lived to 100, but this is not universally the case. One or two of our members have in fact just dropped dead long before they got to 100. So I'm afraid there is no guarantee. But here is Seneca about changing the perspective of time and so on. So imagine the vast abyss of time and think of the entire universe, then compare what we call a human lifetime to that immensity. You will see how tiny a thing it is that we wish for and seek to prolong. So it's about getting a different perspective on things, and the difference between dying at a great age and dying tomorrow, you should consider no great thing. And this is Montaigne. He said, Aristotle tells us of little creatures on the river Hypanis that live for only one day. One that dies at 8 in the morning dies young. One that dies at 5 in the evening dies of old age. And this is Don Cupid, a modern philosopher. We should live as if at the end of the world with the furious joy of those insects that have only 1 or 2 days to emerge, dry out their wings, sip a little nectar, find a mate, copulate energetically, lay their eggs and die. One has work to do and one must do it in a hurry with furious joy. There's a lot of stuff about copulation on these slides, isn't there? And a little bit more on the theme, Marcus Aurelius said, do not overlook how short are the lives of all mortal things and how insignificant. Yesterday, a little blob of mucus, tomorrow, a mummy or ashes. So think on these things and you will be thinking like a Stoic. Aaron.
Are you saying that copulation is the purpose that we're here and we should be getting more of it than we are?
You can interpret it in any way you wish. Yes.
It's about making babies.
Oh.
Don't be attached to it though, Aaron.
Yeah. Okay. The next slide is a very small quotation. This is about people who have a desire for eternal life. This might be people of a religious persuasion or people who actually believe that there is something that we are going to live forever when you die. And someone well known to me said this: isn't this enough? John Hubbard is here tonight. I did tell him I was going to put this up. And I think this is wonderful. And when John says this, it's like he's kind of pointing to, you know, the wonderful things around us, the people in this room, or the trees and the sky, whatever it is that is wonderful in our world. Isn't this enough? You know, not just the wine. No, well, I know he probably doesn't like that picture I put up of him, but. Yes, it could be mistaken for just the wine, but it's just about life in general. So rather than thinking, oh, you know, we must have life eternal. Marcus Aurelius said, the whole of earth too is a speck. And you know what this reminded me of? What did this remind me of? The whole of the earth is a speck, yes. So the pale blue dot is a photograph of Earth taken in 1980 by Voyager 1 at a distance of 3.7 billion miles from the Sun. The image inspired the title of Carl Sagan's book, The Pale Blue Dot, in which he wrote, look again at that dot, that's here, that's home, that's us. Can you see, I don't know if you can see that dot. Yeah. It's just that tiny dot there. And there seems to be, I'm not sure what that is. Does anyone know what that is?
The artifact of the camera.
Oh, was it? Okay. It wasn't a sort of ring of... yeah, heaven and hell.
God's finger.
Yeah, yes, okay. Okay, so... yeah, one of the ways in which I try to get people to think about things with a different perspective. So some of you will be aware of this organisation called Extinction Rebellion, and sometimes, you know, humans, we might be worrying about human extinction, but I do try to remind people that every other human species has gone extinct. I'm sure you can name some of them, Homo Neanderthals and all the rest of it. They've all gone extinct, and so will we in all probability. So perhaps we shouldn't get so worked up about some of these things. So Seneca says, the whole, is that the right one? Okay.
Yeah.
So I've got something on my notes which isn't quite the same. Seneca said we should treat each other well and with good humour, for the things that distract us from those simple aims aren't worth worrying about. Let's go on to this. The whole human race is condemned to die. As for cities that ever held sway over the world, someday people will ask where they were. So why should I be angry or feel sorrow if I precede the fate common to all things by a tiny interval of time? Okay. Yes, so Seneca also said we should treat each other well, with good humour, for the things that distract us from those simple aims aren't worth worrying about. So a few more thoughts on death, and then we'll. I'm going to try and rattle through what's left here so that we finish on time. So the Stoics call death the master fear. If we can conquer the fear of death, then we will be doing well as a Stoic philosopher. The correct attitude towards death is not to fear it, but to have contempt for it. Or we should treat it as something which is next to us all the time, which acts as a reminder to live well now. So a bandit may slit your throat at any time, or you might drop dead in the night. So the Stoics think that we should think about death a lot. So that's what I'm trying to get you to do tonight. So Cicero said, the whole life of a philosopher is preparation for death. Seneca said, make life as a whole agreeable to yourself by banishing all worry about it. I have for a long time tested death before I was born. Okay, I think, Barry, you mentioned this earlier, didn't you? It's about, we've been non-existent for billions of years, trillions of years. So we know a lot about it already. Epictetus, there are no terrors in ceasing to live. Death makes the mortality of life enjoyable. And Schopenhauer, each day is a little life. And Marcus Aurelius, spend each day as if it were the last. Okay, and this is quite a nice one from Cicero. The pleasure of eating lies in having an appetite, not in being glutted. So again, that comes back to this idea of gluttony. The next thought is from Seneca. What is the finest span of life? The finest span of life. Seneca said this, you ask what the finest span would be. To live until you reach wisdom, that man indeed may boldly congratulate himself and give thanks to the gods and to himself, and count in his reckoning with the universe the fact that he has lived, his account will be in credit. So none of you are allowed to die until you have attained wisdom, and I hope that tonight has helped you on your way. Now this is quite an interesting thought, which definitely resonates with our thoughts about assisted dying. Seneca said this, must I await the cruelty of either of disease or of man, when I can depart in the midst of torture and shake off my troubles? Life keeps none of us against our will. Live if it suits you, if not, you can go back to where you came from. And we found out at the beginning of this talk that he slit his wrists and sat in a bath. So anyway, there we go. What did Montaigne say? Living is slavery if the freedom to die is lacking. Okay. This is on desires. The Stoics anticipated the modern concept of the hedonic treadmill, the idea that human desire is insatiable if we keep feeding those desires or believing that satisfaction is always slightly out of reach. And Samuel Johnson expressed it well. I'm wondering if I've had this already, but anyway, did I have this one before? The desires of every man. No, the desires of man increase with his acquisitions. Every step which he advances brings something within his view which he did not see before, and which, as soon as he sees it, he begins to want. No sooner are we supplied with everything that nature can demand than we sit down to contrive artificial appetites. Well, of course, the advertisers know this very well, don't they? Which is why they make us slaves to their products and always wanting the next thing. So some Stoic answers to this form of slavery. This is quite interesting. Epictetus, freedom is attained not by satisfying desires, but by removing them. And Seneca, it is not one who has little who is poor, but one who craves more. No one can have whatever he wants. What he can do is not want what he doesn't have and cheerfully enjoy what comes his way. He was rich, yes, you are right, yeah. Total hypocrite. Well, how can we do this? One of the ways in which we can do this is think about the amount of work involved in getting all of those things, which is another form of slavery. And I'm going to put up a little quotation from my dad, and he said this: possessions make work. That was one of his great mantras, getting them, but then also looking after them. Just a little thing that's, a little ornament that you've put on your mantelpiece. It has to be dusted, or if it's made from silver, it has to be cleaned, So possessions make work. He was a bit of a Stoic. And here is Marcus Aurelius. Don't imagine having things that you don't have. Pick the best of the things you do have and think how much you would want them if you didn't have them. In other words, appreciate what you have. Pleasure. The Stoics held that the greatest pleasures are the pleasures of the mind. This is Seneca. Those who rate pleasure as the supreme ideal hold that the good is found by the senses, but we Stoics maintain that it is found by the understanding, and we assign it to the mind. It is the mind that makes us rich. It goes with us into exile. So this is what we try to do at Dorset Humanists. We stimulate your mind twice a month, and we give you fantastic pleasure that isn't a form of slavery, but it is the highest form of pleasure known to human beings. This is Epictetus. It shows a lack of talent to spend much time on bodily activities, as being excessive in exercise, in eating and drinking, excessive in emptying the bowels, and in copulating. These things should be done incidentally, and our attention should be devoted to the mind. Apparently the Romans used to just sit around. Emptying their bowels was a kind of social occasion. Used to sit around doing that rather a lot. Well, I think I certainly get a lot of pleasure from intellectual activity, reading, thinking, writing, and speaking. Now, this is contempt for or indifference to the opinions of others. This is Schopenhauer. What goes on in other people's consciousness is a matter of indifference to us. We come to see how superficial and futile are most people's thoughts, how narrow their ideas, how mean their sentiments, how perverse their opinions, and how much error there is in most of them. True? No? No?
He hasn't got any friends.
No. He was a bit of a miserable old git, wasn't he? Seneca said, there is only one good, trust in oneself. But there's a contradictory opinion from Montaigne. I think my opinions are good and sound, but who does not think the same of his own? So we should cultivate intellectual humility as well. This is caring for others and sociability, Seneca. This is the first promise that philosophy holds out to us: fellow feeling, humanity, and sociability. And Epictetus, I should not be unfeeling like a statue. I should care for my relationships, both natural and acquired, as a pious man, a son, a brother, a father, and a citizen. I think you mentioned earlier, are the Stoics unfeeling? Well, I don't think they were. They weren't. They didn't. Although we see them like statues, but they weren't really. This is about chronic anxiety. This is Seneca. It is ruinous when a mind is worried about the future. Wretched before its wretchedness begins. Most mortals exist in a fever of anxiety. Well, there's a lot of that around today. So again, the Stoic antidote is to remember that anxiety is usually a reaction to thoughts running riot in our minds rather than reality. Adversity, we're nearly there by the way. According to Stoicism, life is a rugged journey, not for the faint-hearted. We must learn to put up with the things that we cannot avoid. So adversity is an unavoidable part of life, and there's no point complaining about it or blaming other people. So Seneca says, whatever happens, let your mind suppose that it was bound to happen, and do not rail at nature. So it's about accepting things. And Nietzsche had an even more extreme version of this. My formula for greatness is amor fati, I think it's pronounced. The fact that, so love your fate, the fact that a man wishes nothing to be different either in front of him or behind him or for all eternity. So his test is that you should be prepared to live your life over and over again for eternity. And if you're not prepared to do that, you're not doing it right. Maybe a little bit harsh. So the Stoic response to adversity is not to say, oh no, how terrible. It may be terrible, but their advice is, what can be done with this? Whatever happens, try to turn it to constructive ends. So this is quite a good one from Seneca. An untroubled life in which fortune makes no inroads is called a dead sea. To have nothing to stir you and rouse you to action, no attack by which to try the strength of your spirit, merely to lie in unshaken idleness, this is not to be tranquil, it is to be stranded in windless calm. So the idea there is that adversity kind of makes us what we are. Okay, this is the very last quotation from Seneca, and then I think we can wrap things up. Here is the result of wisdom, a constant and unvarying kind of joy. So long as we draw breath, so long as we live among humans, let us cherish humanity. Which is a very humanist sentiment. Thank you very much. So we've got 4 minutes left for any other points or questions. I mean, any other reactions? Yes.
This is the first time I've heard about Stoicism. Stoics are cool, calm, collected people, as I get from this.
Yes.
But another thing is they're boring people.
Boring? Oh dear, you think they're a bit boring?
You know, it's a contradiction.
Mm.
It's
Well, they weren't against copulation and things like that, but...
but in her other life, she's quite, you know, emotive, but not orally, sort of, you know, on the computer, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I don't think, you know, trying to balance the two must be really difficult.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay, interesting. Barney?
Yeah, it strikes me that people who have near brushes with death often exhibit stoicism.
Yes.
You see people on the news who've just been in some horrible accident and lost an arm and a leg, and they always say, oh, but I'm very lucky.
Yes, yes.
So maybe brushes with death bring out the stoicist?
Yes, the stoicism in you. Yes. Yes, I think you're right, because death has come very close to those people. And the Stoics are kind of saying we need to, in order to live right, we need to sort of have death close to us.
And then you'll feel lucky every day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, if you take extreme stoicism, it can seem a bit fatalistic in some respects.
Yes.
Accept too much, you know.
Uh-huh,
I was thinking of, you talked a lot about loss and how to cope with things that you've lost and reevaluate, you know, your attitude towards that. And that's, you know, great. But also people could have developed the same attitude for something maybe that's going to happen in the future. Like if you had a loss, like you lost a house or lost a partner or something like that, you might think twice about wanting to sort of get involved in doing, you know, so it might hold you back.
Yes.
I mean, the thoughts again that you might think, oh, I don't want to get hurt again, you know, so
yes.
avoid that.
Yeah.
So you could just accept that too easily rather challenging that a bit, you know?
Yes, okay, okay, yes.
I can't help thinking the Stoics have missed a trick, because they're saying avoid externals, and a lot of the time, unless it's you've done it yourself, you've got no control over when you die.
No.
So why are you worrying about an external?
Yes, well, I think they're saying not to worry about it, but to be indifferent to it. To know that it's going to happen, because it will happen, but to be indifferent to it. Do you think there's a bit of a...
Something out of your control.
Yes.
We haven't said, if we talk about death or not, I think what people are really afraid of is how they die.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's true, that's true. Susan, yeah.
I wondered if there was anything more enlightening about the fact that there is an ego death that we overcome by taking our egos out of situations. That's what brings us the lack of desire for more than
yes. That's very Buddhist, isn't it? The sort of the no self doctrine. I didn't come across that in Stoicism, but that's a good one. Yeah. Elaine?
I think one of the greatest things that can be of value to you is an ability to cope with whatever comes your way. And I mean, I don't think I would be terribly good at coping with everything. And as the mother of 2 children and the grandmother of 4, one of the things that I've tried to pass on to somehow build in them was the ability for them to be able to cope with what the future might build.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm more aware of it as a grandmother, And there's so many awful things that we didn't have to face, which even in a settled country like this, our grandchildren have to be able to cope with and work out for themselves. And I don't think my children probably would think, oh, my mum and dad, you know, they gave us all these gifts of how to cope. Everybody's got to cope for themselves in the long run. And even if you don't have children, there are other people you can help to influence.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Elaine. Just time for one or two more. Pat, did you want to?
Well, I'm just noticing that all the philosophers were male, and I'm a little bit unhappy about it.
Yes. No, I was going to mention this, you know, and I was going to ask, you know, does anyone think that this is a bit of a sort of male-orientated philosophy or way to think? I don't know if you think
more in the mind than emotion.
Yes. Yeah, it's an interesting observation. Barry and then Aaron, and then we'd better wrap up. Yeah.
The greatest gift of Stoics to philosophy is virtue ethics. Virtue ethics remained very fallow for a very, very long time, until the Second World War, where all the male philosophers in Oxford went off to war and left the women behind. And there are some very, very famous women, I won't name, who resurrected, if you like, virtue ethics.
Yes.
So we have a lot to owe female philosophers for making us aware of what Stoicism's actually given to us in terms of ethics.
Could you mention any names?
I'll look it up quickly. I've got it on my phone. Give me a second. Yes, she's a peripheral one. Who was the lady who invented the trolley problem?
I was just thinking that.
The trolley problem.
So it's hot and I'm tired and I can't quite remember their name, but I'll give a few minutes.
Okay. Let's go to Aaron. Aaron, did you?
Yeah, is Stoicism and leadership not compatible? I'm just trying to think about Trump and Biden and Starmer and Blair and even Thatcher. And none of them, it seems like Stoicism, you want to kind of leave the world to do its own thing and not get involved, and leadership is about the opposite.
Well, just remember, I mean, Marcus Aurelius was Roman emperor, so he obviously found that it was compatible in some way. Seneca was also a Roman statesman, so they did think that we should be involved in public affairs. It wasn't just about, you know, sitting by the fireside like Montaigne suggested. They did believe in getting stuck in with public affairs.
Margaret Anscombe wrote a seminal essay in 1958, Modern Moral Philosophy, in which she put virtue ethics back on the map. Virtue ethics came out of Stoicism.
Okay.
And it's now a very dominant field
in
moral philosophy. So yes, we have had major female contributions to this.
Good. Okay. Yeah.
Just a quick comment.
Steve?
Seneca was an advisor to Nero, so it's right up there with the leadership.
Yes. Yeah. Daniel?
Can't help but be reminded of the Serenity Prayer, which is
Yeah.
one of the things about Christianity I do like, which is
Here it is.
oh, thank you.
I've already googled it.
Yes. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Very good. Very good.
Which I love, which is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change,
Oh.
the courage to change the person that I can,
Oh.
and the wisdom to know that that is me.
Oh, very good. Very good. Okay. Well, look, I'd better finish with